Don't forget to like and subscribe to Jolie Knots Crochet. Share with your friends. Hit that little notification bell so you can get notified when new patterns release. All our videos are available in left and right-handed tutorials.
And today we're going to be making this Scrappy cardigan. Now this is a blanket cardigan. It's really just like a blanket with sleeves. And how we are working this is double-stranded. We're going to use 2 strands together. What I've done with this one is one of my strands, I used it all of my extra grays, blacks, creams, light grays, and then the opposite strand, I mixed up all of my scraps of jewel tones. I tried not to go more than 2 rows per color until I got to my sleeves. This pattern, other than the sleeves, is consisting of double crochet rows and V-stitch rows in a rectangle with holes for our arms. So that's how we're gonna build our sweater, our blanket sweater. All right, so now as far as the yarn we're using, I'm using a whole bunch of scraps that I've collected. I made this one back in May, so I don't have as many scraps as I did for this one. So I'm improvising a little bit. And what I'm doing is using all the scraps that I have been collecting, mostly in jewel tones or colors that are matching. Now I've got some partial skeins that were from projects prior to that I didn't use the entire thing of. And then I've got 2 skeins actually. This works out perfectly because it's grays and dark grays. And this one as well, because I did buy these for a project and I didn't end up needing all of them. So these are just kind of like scrap balls or extra skeins that I have lying around. I've got a whole bunch of different grays and blacks for our color throughout the entire project. Now you're gonna need about 3 pounds of yarn. That's gonna be about, oh gosh, say 1,500 grams approximately, and maybe about 2,700 yards. Now I know it's kind of hard to gauge exactly how much yarn you have, but what you could do is just put a basket together, put it on the scale and weigh it and see if you've got enough. You want half to be in your neutral dark grays, blacks, colors, and then the other half in whatever colorway you choose. I've chosen jewel tones for the most part, and you can choose, of course, whatever colors you want. For this project, we'll be using an 8mm hook. All right, so to get started, I'm using my 8mm hook. I've got my 2 small balls of scrap yarn that I'm getting started with, and I am going to start with a chain of 80. Now you can start with any chain. You can start with more or less. That's totally fine, but what you're going to want is multiples of 3 plus 2. So I'm going to go for 80. You work your multiples of 3 plus 2, and I'll meet you back here. All right, so once we've got our 80 chains and our multiples of 3 plus 2, we are going to add 2 chains, and then we're going to double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. And then we're going to double crochet into every single chain all the way down to the other side. Now here I am at the end of my scrap piece, and I've got another one here. The way that I'm going to join these is with a magic knot. You can join them however you want, but I want to show you this is going to be a lot of ends to weave in, so it would be beneficial if you can find an easy way to join and not have to weave in all those ends. So I'm going to take my old yarn, or the one that's ending, and the new yarn, and I'm going to put them both together. I'm going to take my thumb and place it right over the yarn pretty snugly so just the ends are poking through. Now I'm going to take my new yarn and I'm going to wrap it around my thumb once and then around my thumb twice. Place my finger back there so it's nice and tight again. And now I'm going to pull the yarn between my thumb and the yarn there, okay? You see I pulled the yarn between, and I'm going to take this little end smush it in, hold it really tight, and I'm going to pull and allow these all to pull together. Now, some yarn and their texture is really tough and difficult to do a magic knot with, but most yarn that is just a, you know, like a worsted weight that we're using now will be just fine to do that with. And this knot ain't going anywhere. If I pull this really hard, the yarn will break before that knot. All right? So I now am continuing on with my double crochets down. Now, when I run out of my purple, I am just going to replace it with another of my color scheme. Now, if I've got a larger ball of yarn, scrap yarn, and I don't really want to go farther than 2 or 3 rows of one of the colors. So I'll just snip that off and switch out colors. Don't use all of your itty bitty scraps all at once, because then you're going to be left with big chunks and hunks at the end. So try to separate your colors to get them a little bit even. All right, so here we are towards the end of our chain, and now I'm needing to change out my purple color. Now remember, any yarn size is fine to use as long as when you are using it, you are using a thicker yarn as the contrasting piece. And that one came out a little bit funky, which is okay. I'm just going to snip off the little extra end. And that'll be it. So I'm finishing out my chain here. My blue is coming in. Now once we've gotten to the end, we're going to chain 2. That's not going to count as a stitch. We're going to start every row with a chain 2. Turn your work, double crochet into the first stitch, and double crochet into every stitch after that. So you're going to start with 3 rows of double crochet. So go ahead and finish out this row, work 1 more row of double crochets, and then I will show you the next row. All right, here we are at the beginning of row 4. We just finished our last double crochet, and now we're going to chain 2, turn our work, and double crochet into the first stitch. Now we are going to double crochet. We're going to skip 1 stitch and double crochet into the second, chain 1, and then double crochet into that same stitch. So you should have 1 double crochet in the beginning, skip 1 stitch, double crochet, chain, double crochet, all into the same stitch. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches, double crochet into the third, chain 1, double crochet into the same, and that's your repeat. Skip 2 stitches, double crochet into the third, chain 1, double crochet into the same stitch. Repeat your V's all the way down. You should have 1 stitch left at the end, and that's where we'll put a double crochet, and I will meet you right back there. Alright, so here we are at the end of our V-stitch row. We should have 2 stitches left. We're skipping the next stitch and double crocheting into the last stitch. These 4 rows are your repeat rows. So this is approximately 3.5 inches wide. We want our front panel to be approximately 20 inches wide. Now if you want it longer, then that's totally fine. Go ahead and work your repeats out, and I will meet you back here so we can make our armholes. Okay, so here I have completed all of my repeats. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now I've got 1 double crochet row. This is measuring so far unblocked 19 inches. So I wanted it to measure 20 inches, which is good because this is definitely going to have some stretch to it. Your stitches are going to loosen up, and everything will start to lay a little bit flatter and looser. Okay, so getting started on the row with our sleeves, we're going to chain 2. Remember, that doesn't count as a stitch. And we are going to put 16 double crochets. 2, 3, 5. Once you've got your 16 double crochets, you're going to chain 21. Now you're going to count 21 stitches over. And we're going to skip those. And into the next stitch, we're going to put a double crochet. And that's your armhole. Now we are going to double crochet the rest of the way back. And then you're going to continue with your repeat. So you're going to work your double crochets all the way down to the end, and then you're going to work your way back, and you are going to double crochet into every single stitch, every single chain piece and every single stitch all the way back down, and then continue with your repeat, working your V-stitch row, 3 double crochet rows, and your V-stitch row. Now for our back panel, we're going to do 4 repeats. So on our front panels, we have got 5 repeats, and then for the back panel, we're going to do 4 repeats, and then we'll make another armhole. So go ahead and finish that out, and I'll meet you back at the other arm. Okay, so I have completed 4 repeats from my previous armhole. So that's 1 here, 2, 3, 4. Now, once I started my 5th one, I did my 1 row of double crochets, and now we're going to put our next armhole. Now, this is about 15 inches wide. It'll probably stretch to about 16 when it starts to settle. Now you can do an extra row of repeats. That's totally fine also. So the first thing we're going to do is put 16 double crochets, just like we did with the last hole. and 16. Now we're going to chain 21. Now we will skip 21 stitches and double crochet into the 22nd stitch. So and then you're going to finish out just like you would normally with your double crochet row, coming back across, double crocheting into every single chain, back up, and then you'll have your 3 rows of double crochet. You'll do your V-stitch row, and then you'll start your next repeat. And on the other side of your arm, you're going to have 5 repeats. Now, like I said, your front panels, your back panels, everything's customizable. Alright, so now we are going to be working on our arms. You should have 2 arm slits that are just like this, of course, between your panels. Now, I've gone ahead and worked one of my arms. I did have this yarn that was left over in a big ball for a project that I only used part of it. So I went ahead and I did the whole thing in that yarn. Now when we get to our cuffs, we're going to switch our hook size to a 6.5 millimeter hook. If you have big wrists, this one fits me pretty good once it gets over my hand. But if you have a bigger wrist, you can go ahead and go to a 6 and a 5 or a 7. Just do the first couple rows and see how that fit is, okay? So in order to get started, we are going to find your armpit space. Taking both of your strands, we're going to find the bottom of our armpit, and there's a double crochet here. There's a double crochet here. That is where our chain was, so that's where the space is, and that's where we're going to get started. We're going to start with 3 double crochets over that post. Okay, so now we are going to put 1 double crochet in every stitch going all the way up, 3 double crochets over the post on the top, and then 1 double crochet in every stitch going down. Now, to make this more secure, the double crochet that I put into this stitch is worked already with this double crochet, this big hole. Now this is technically my next stitch. I want to make my armpit holes and my shoulder a little bit stronger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go between those 2 double crochets and then work into the top of my double crochets. So just at my seam where I'm turning my corner is where I'm going to go between the double crochets, because I just want it to hold a little bit. You don't have to do that, that's just my preference. So double crochet all the way up. You should have multiples of 3. This row should be giving you multiples of 3. We should have had multiples of 3, chaining our armholes and skipping stitches for our armholes. And so you should still have multiples of 3, and then we're doing 3 in those double crochet posts, so that'll keep it as multiples of 3. Alright, I've got my last double crochet worked. Now I'm slip stitching to the top of my first double crochet. That's going to be our only round of double crochet on the sleeves. So now what we're going to do is slip stitch over 1 stitch. We're going to chain 4. That's going to count as our first double crochet and as our chain space. And now you're going to put a double crochet into that stitch. So we've just created a V-stitch. Now you're going to skip 2 stitches, and into your 3rd stitch we're going to put a V-stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, skip 2 stitches, and V-stitch. And you're going to work that all the way around, and we're going to slip stitch to the top of the 3rd chain to join. So go ahead and continue that, and then I will meet you right back here. Okay, so here we are at the end of round 2 on the arms. We are going to slip stitch into the middle of your V-stitch and chain 4. Now double crochet right into that same V-stitch, and we're creating a V. Now you're going to V-stitch into every single V-stitch all the way around, and then we will slip stitch to the top of the 3rd chain going around. All right, here we are at the end of our row. We're just going to slip stitch to the top of the 3rd chain. And now this next row we're going to be decreasing. We're decreasing 2 stitches, so we're going to slip stitch into the center there. And now we're just going to chain 3. That's going to count as 1 double crochet. So we're going to decrease 2 stitches at this V-stitch, and from there we're going to put a V-stitch into the next V-stitch. Now we're going to V-stitch all the way around, and then we will slip stitch into the top of our 3rd chain. Okay, so now here we are at the end of that row. We're slip stitching to the top of our 3rd chain, and that completes our decrease row. So now in this row we are going to slip stitch over 2. We're trying to get to the middle of the first V-stitch. And now we're going to V-stitch 2, 3, 4, double crochet to create our first V. Now go ahead and V-stitch all the way around and slip stitch to the top of your 3rd chain right here. Once you get that done, you're going to be doing 3 more rows of just V-stitches. Row 1 is your double crochet row. Row 2 is your first V-stitch row. Row 3 is your second V-stitch row. This one's row 4. This one's row 5. So you're going to finish out 5, 6, 7, 8. Finish this one out, then do 3 more rows of V-stitches, and I will meet you right back so I can show you how we're decreasing again. Okay, so here we are at the end of row 8, round 8. This is going to be another decrease round, and the way we're going to decrease here, because we don't have a middle V-stitch, is slip stitch into the next V-stitch, chain 3, and double crochet into the same V-stitch. Not 4, because we're taking away the chain to decrease. We'll also take away the chain on your last V-stitch. So you should have 2 double crochets, 2 double crochets. You should have them in a row. So work your way around with V-stitches. This is round 9. And then when you get to your last V-stitch on this end, like I said, 2 double crochets, slip stitch to the top of the 3rd chain. Alright, so beginning round 10, we've slip stitched to the top of our 3rd chain. Now what we're going to do is chain 4, and we're going to start our V-stitch rows again. Double crochet into that same stitch. And then our next V-stitch on top of the V-stitches. So we're V-stitching all the way around. This will be the last V-stitch that you work into, and then you'll skip these 2 stitches and slip stitch to the top of your 3rd chain to join. From there, you're going to repeat 3 more rounds of a V-stitches, and that should take you to the end of round 13. I will meet you back at the beginning of round 14. Okay, now we've finished that 5 rows. So we've got your decrease in 1 row, and then V-stitches in the next 4. So what you're going to do is now go back and you are going to repeat rows 4 through 13. Now, depending on your arm length, you can repeat just V-stitch rows after that because you don't really want to decrease more, or you can stop your row at any row before because the multiples are not going to matter of your V-stitches. So continue until the length that you want and take note of the row that you stopped on so you can make it the same size for the other arm. So go ahead and do that. I'm going to finish mine out. I'm finishing out one full repeat, and then I'll meet you back here so we can work on the cuffs. All right. So to start with our cuff, we are switching to a 6.5 millimeter hook, a smaller hook size from the 8. And once we have joined our work together, we're going to single crochet into the same stitch. That should be your chain 3. That counts as your double crochet. Now we're going to skip our chain space and we're going to go into the next double crochet and single crochet. Single crochet in each and every double crochet, skipping all of the chain spaces. We're not doing anything with them, we're just skipping them. So just single crochet all the way around and then slip stitch to join. Okay, once we've made it to the beginning, we're going to slip stitch to our first single crochet to join. Now we're going to chain 1 and single crochet into the same stitch. Chain 1, skip 1 stitch and single crochet into the next. Chain 1, skip 1 stitch and single crochet into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. So you're going to do that all the way around. You're going to end with 1 chain after your last single crochet. Okay, here we are up to the last single crochet. I'm going to chain 1, skip my last single crochet, and then slip stitch into my first single crochet. Now, to continue this stitch, we're single crocheting in all of our chain spaces. So we're going to slip stitch into our chain space, chain 1, and then start your single crochet. Single crochet, chain 1, single crochet into your chain space, skipping your single crochet, chain 1, skip your single crochet, and then single crochet into the next chain space. We're doing that all the way around. Okay, so here we are at our last chain space. We've got a single crochet into that, and now we've got a single crochet before we can slip stitch. So we're going to chain 1 and then slip stitch. And from there, we're slip stitching over again into our chain space, chaining 1 and repeating that round. You're going to repeat that round until you have about 9 or 10 or 11 rounds, just growing your cuff to the desired height that you want. Thank you everybody for watching Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Check the link down below for the written pattern. All of my videos are available in right and left-handed tutorials, so don't forget to check those out. Thank you for watching.